Welcome back to Sleepy Hollow and Beyond. I'm Nick.
I'm Nicholas.
And I'm Leah, and today we're at Sparta Cemetery in Ossining, New York, just 10 minutes outside of the town of Sleepy Hollow.
This is a 260-year-old cemetery that holds the remains of people with incredible stories, like a man who escaped enslavement in Maryland and went on to become a 108-year-old landowner, one of the very first families that settled in the area, and a mysterious figure known only as the Leatherman.
So if that's something you're interested in learning about, then sit back, relax, and enjoy the video.
Sparta Cemetery is approximately 2 acres that sits between Route 9 and Revolutionary Road. It was established in 1764 and began as a burial ground for the First Presbyterian Church of Mount Pleasant. The church stood on site but was damaged at some point during the Revolutionary War. Even though it was damaged, it remained in use until 1800, when the congregation finished the construction on a church in the heart of the village of Sing Sing, which is now Ossining. The First Presbyterian Church of Ossining still stands. The land Sparta sits on was donated by Frederick Phillips for church use, and it contains the graves of early English, Dutch, and French Huguenot settlers. The site also includes the graves of 34 identified Revolutionary War veterans.
In 1851, Dale Cemetery opened across town, and Sparta saw fewer burials, but remained active into the 20th century. The last recorded interment was in 2007. The Presbyterian Church tried to maintain the site, but in 1939 the Ossining Historical Society took over upkeep in partnership with the church. In 1984, ownership transferred fully to the society, and in 2012, the cemetery was deeded to the town of Ossining. It is also listed on the New York State National Register of Historic Places. After the British departed our shores in 1783, Phillipsburg Manor, having been seized from the Phillips family, was sold bit by bit. Sparta Cemetery sat on land that was worked by a tenant farmer named Arnold Hunt. Hunt fought for the Patriot cause and was able to purchase the land from the commissioners of forfeiture, but not before the commission carved out the 2 acres of Sparta and made it exempt from the purchase, thus ensuring its survival. Arnold lies in rest with his wife Phoebe and many of his descendants, surrounded by the land that was once his farm. There are over 30 Revolutionary War veterans buried in Sparta Cemetery, but it's interesting to note that there is one that fought for the British. Polycarpus William Taylor was born in Durham, England in 1753. Polycarpus, also known as Paul, enlisted and became an officer in the 57th Regiment of Foot. He was stationed in Long Island for most of the war, but when the war ended in 1783, Paul decided to return home only briefly to accompany his wife Alice back across the Atlantic. The couple briefly stayed on Long Island until relocating to the Sparta area sometime before the 1790 census. Unfortunately, Paul died in 1791 at the age of 38. There's no record of his cause of death, but it is noted that he died without a will, indicating that it may have been very sudden.
In the years leading up to the Revolutionary War, the Ladew family of Ossining were a well-established and pastoral clan. They were among the earliest settlers with family members buried in Sparta Cemetery. This is the only family plot in the cemetery that has its stones surrounded by brick. It was a stipulation in the will of Abraham Ladew Sr. The gravestone of young Sarah Ladew, who died at the age of 5, is the oldest legible stone in the cemetery, a somber reminder of the family's deep roots in the community. In September of 1780, the British sloop of war Vulture sailed up the Hudson River, its cannon fire damaging one of the Ladew family headstones forever. We know the Vulture sailed up the Hudson to deliver Major John Andre to his meeting with the traitor Benedict Arnold, who would hand over the plans for the fort at West Point. Two men who worked at the cider mill on what is now Croton Point Park spotted the ship and went to retrieve a cannon. Upon return, they fired on the Vulture. A skirmish followed as the Vulture returned fire while it fled back to New York City. It was a stray cannonball from this clash that sailed across the waters of the Hudson and directly through the headstone of young Abraham Ladew, the 7-year-old son of Abraham Sr. With the Vulture's retreat back to the city, John Andre was left stranded, leading to his eventual capture as well as Arnold's discovery as a traitor, quite possibly saving the revolution. Abraham's headstone was left with a hole in it. The headstone has been removed due to its poor condition, but is still in the possession of the Ossining Historic Society.
Lewis Brady was born into slavery around 1773 in Maryland, a state where the institution of bondage shaped the daily lives of thousands. His family had deep roots in American history. It's believed that his father was once enslaved by none other than George Washington. Lewis lived under bondage through his early life. Lewis's father was emancipated by Martha Washington in 1802. Unfortunately, Lewis was owned by a colonel who lived nearby. Brady served as a body servant for the colonel during the War of 1812. When the colonel died, Brady saw a window of opportunity, and he took it. He fled north. Lewis struck out on his own, traveling northward on the routes that would become known as the Underground Railroad. He worked and saved through Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and finally settled in Westchester County, New York, near the river that would come to define him. By the mid-1800s, Lewis Brady had reinvented himself. In a time when black freedom was still fragile and deeply contested, he quietly built a livelihood. He bought a small sloop, a kind of modest sailing vessel, and entered the clam and oyster trade on the Hudson River, the lifeblood of so many river communities. Day after day, he sailed its tides, hauling in oysters and clams to sell at market. Over time, he became known not simply as Lewis Brady, but as Captain Brady, a sign of respect that he'd earned on the water. He lived in the Sparta section of Ossining, a working-class riverside enclave, and his house still stands today. His neighbors knew him as quiet but steady, a man who weathered both storms and history. In a world where black men were often denied dignity, Lewis Brady carved out his own legacy, with a boat, his labor, and a will to endure. When Lewis died on October 29, 1881, he had lived a full 108 years. He is buried next to his wife and child, and is the longest living person to have been buried in Sparta Cemetery. His name lives on in the form of an intersection named after him in the Sparta section of Ossining. The last story we will tell is certainly the strangest. It is about a man known only as the Leatherman. In the late 1800s, a man roamed the landscapes of Westchester County and the Hudson Valley. Known only as the Leatherman, his real name has never been confirmed. What is known, however, is that he lived a hauntingly solitary existence, surviving mostly on the edges of society. His story is wrapped in mystery and has left an indelible mark on the region's folklore. The Leatherman was described as a rough, bearded man who dressed entirely in a homemade leather outfit. It was said that he traveled on foot, often through rural areas, and was frequently seen along roadsides in Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess counties. His route, which spanned over 365 miles, took him through small towns, forests, and hills. He was known to stop at local inns and taverns, but never stayed in one place for too long. People in the towns he visited spoke of him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Though he was not unfriendly, he was not willing to speak about his past. The Leatherman's journey was shrouded in mystery. Some stories suggest he was a Frenchman, possibly a soldier, who had lost his memory or been exiled after a traumatic event. Others believed he was simply a wanderer who had chosen to live outside the boundaries of normal society. What is certain is that the Leatherman endured hardship. He often relied on the kindness of strangers for food, occasionally performing small tasks or offering odd jobs in exchange for meals. His diet was sparse and often consisted of bread, cheese, and meat, anything he could scavenge or trade. Eventually, his health began to decline due to cancer forming in his mouth and jaw. An attempt was made to help him in vain, as he refused treatment and pressed on his usual path. The Leatherman was found dead in March of 1889, near the small village of Briarcliff Manor, which is located in Westchester County, New York. Specifically, his body was discovered in a cave in the area near the Hudson River. He was buried near the outskirts of Sparta Cemetery. His stone was dangerously close to the road and was relocated to where it is today. An attempt was made to exhume his remains, but the attempt was unsuccessful. For those who visit Sparta Cemetery today, there is still an aura of mystery surrounding the Leatherman's grave. His headstone simply reads, "The Leatherman," with no further explanation or clue as to who he was. Perhaps it's best that way. The mystery of his life, like his travels, remains a part of the history of Ossining, a tale passed down from generation to generation.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most intriguing corners of Westchester County, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more historical mysteries, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you visited Sparta Cemetery? Or do you have any local legends of your own? Let us know. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.